There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in context, little of a project I'm working on in Montana, and then we're going to go from there, and we're going to have you experience 360 videos, um, and we're going to hopefully have some questions and discussion towards the end. So I'm just going to put this in a context of one reason to do this, and we can then talk about it as we go through. So as my job as the Mineral Museum Director and the Outreach Director here at the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology, I'm trying to bring the geology of Montana in an accessible way to the citizens of Montana. And Montana is a huge place. I mean, not compared to some Canadian provinces, but it's a big state. And it's a challenge to travel around. The roads are bad in the winter. There's a lot of far-flung places. In some places, you might get there and then have a 5 mile, 7, 8 kilometer hike to get to one of these geosites. And also the Bureau of Mines and Geology produces a ton of data and maps there's a lot of technical information that I'm trying to translate, if you will, to the general public. And I found that 360 video recording and viewing is coming on very quickly as a technology, and it's quite fun and impressive. And so I want to share that with you today. And it can either be in a VR headset or on a computer, but all of these technologies are approaching mainstream. You start to see commercials, at least here in the US, of VR headsets and people boxing and doing things like that. And so I'm finding it a new way to engage public of all ages. So experience or preview new places. And of course, as a geologist, and many of you are geologists, the best way to experience the geology is to go to the place and experience it yourself. But of course, we're not always able to do that everywhere. Okay, and so I'm going to put this work in context of what I call an interpretive geonarrative. And what is that? Well, I made up a definition that it's a collaborative, consistent, and cohesive message that conveys the geologic story of a place and inspires deeper learning. And it manifests as a series of pillars that span time and space. And of course, as in geology, we need to overlap those pillars, usually because geologic processes overlap in time and space. So each pillar is general enough that specific geologic events and phenomena that we might see at a place called a geosite fit somewhere into the narrative. And each pillar is descriptive enough that it resonates with a general audience. So no technical geology terms and things like that. And so let's use the fire and ice aspiring georegion or geopark. We're using the term georegion to because working with our First Nations collaborators, they find the term park challenging. So we're calling it a georegion, but it's part of the Canadian Geoparks Network and that sort of thing. And so our logo here has 4 elements to it. And as you go through those elements, we have mountains that were coming and going over the last 250 million years. Ice was coming and going in those mountains here in blue over the last 2 million years or so. Fire and ice, so eruptions against, on top of, proximity to that ice are kind of the moniker of the geopark, the unique geologic aspect over the last 200,000 years or so. And then those edifices are at high elevation with climate change, glaciers melting, things like that. Things are collapsing into the valley where we all live, or at least have a place to live. And that's over the last 11,000 years. So that's an example of an interpreted geonarrative that we developed for the fire and ice georegion. And now here, my job with the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology was to create one for Montana. And you look at the geologic map of Montana that's behind me on the wall as well, and you start to think, whoa, this is a lot bigger. 10,000 square kilometers is the georegion approximately. Of course, Montana is much bigger than that. And here on the left-hand side, you can see and this is a simplified map, of course, all of the different geology that I'm trying to take the materials from the MBMG and explain in approachable ways. So how do I do that? Well, of course, digging into the resources here, Roadside Geology of Montana, a new version came out a couple of years ago, is quite good, but it's a little bit technical for your average person. And then, of course, we have A bunch of publications. We had 88 last year from the Bureau of Mines and Geology. They go everywhere from very specific academic style publications, this one about sapphires, to more outreach publications like a geologic roadmap of Montana. We also publish a calendar every year that gets around the state into legislators' offices and schools and things like that. And you can see here on a map of Montana over the last 25 years, these calendars have been done. So we cover these areas in a way that is approachable to the public. This year's calendar is from the Mineral Museum. So you can little self plug there. We're talking about the renovation, and then we have our new fluorescent room samples here on the top front. And then, of course, I go into my colleagues' offices and ask them questions about specific aspects of the geology in order to create this interpretive geo-narrative. Also, another product from the MBMG, they're working on a new version of this, is the stratigraphic correlation chart. So northwestern Montana, southwestern, central, eastern, all across the state, does this geology show up in multiple places? And are these different units distributed across the state through geologic time? And then are there patterns in time and space that I can use to tell this story? Also, we have the physical features of Montana, where we have the Ice Age. This is a really cool map of where the glaciers, of course, came down from Canada and created pretty neat features in Montana. We have all these mountain ranges, especially in western Montana, active seismicity in western Montana, and then all the mountain ranges and tectonic features of those mountain ranges throughout the state. So using all of these products from the MBMG, I put together, I've done it. There we go. I put together an interpretive geo-narrative with time. And so how do this is a lot of time, the Montana geology is, 3.5 to 4 billion years worth of Earth's history, much different than the georegion in Canada. And so I thought, how can I do this in a way that people can engage with and maybe remember? And so I thought an alliterative terms could do that. So, starting with supercontinents and seas, sort of the older geology in Montana, a lot of breaking up and collision of continents. There's evidence for that. A lot of coming and going of seaways are still preserved. And then deposition in dinosaurs in the state. Of course, deposition started and is continuing to the present. But during the Hell Creek Formation, there's famous spots in Montana that have dinosaur digs at them, and the public really engages with the dinosaurs and the history of finding dinosaurs that continues today in Montana. And then mountains and magmas. Mountains have come and gone, of course. And then magmas, we had a big geologic time space of intrusions that host the mineral deposits, especially here in Butte, Montana, the richest hill on Earth, a huge copper deposit that's been mined since the late 1800s. And it's the reason this town is here and why the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology is in Butte. And then eruptions and earthquakes. If you think about Yellowstone being just the southern tip of Montana, we could argue there's active eruptions in the state, and then earthquakes, of course, are happening on kind of a daily to weekly basis in southwestern Montana. Glaciers are what's left of them in the state. Glacier National Park is in northwest Montana, and groundwater, glaciers and groundwater going together as we get towards the present. And then rivers and resources is the most recent sort of pillar of the geology. So supercontinents and seas, deposition and dinosaurs, mountains and magmas, eruptions and earthquakes, glaciers and groundwater, rivers and resources. It's kind of a lot, but it was so far, I'm still working on this, of course, as we always refine our work, is the best way I could find to get some engagement. But then I thought, well, this is kind of blocky and kind of nerdy geology type diagram. So as is what we do these days, I said, I need sort of artistic representations of this. And I'm not a very good artist at all. So AI is, of course, where we go for that. And so I put all of these terms into AI. And here are the sorts of things I came up with. So deposition in dinosaurs, you can see here on this kind of more artistic rendering of the last diagram, we have dinosaurs next to a river. Great. AI did that one with some strange flying dinosaurs here in the sky. Supercontinents and seas. This is what I got from AI. Okay, there's an ocean, there's some continents there. Good enough. Mountains and magmas was when AI really started to fail. And I think there's a real opportunity for someone to train AI, a geology student, on geologic terms. Because a magma to AI is always on the surface. And when I say AI, this is Photoshop AI generative. So the newest version of Photoshop has a little generate button, and then you can type in what you want. And so I ended up, everything was a lava flow on the surface for magmas. And so I started saying mountain with lava inside of it and blah, blah, blah. And I came up in the end with this hole in the mountain representing a magma chamber. So there's my mountains and magmas. AI, of course, needs to learn more, like all of us. Eruptions and earthquakes. The eruptions were, of course, more prevalent because earthquakes are very hard to show in an artistic diagram. One thing that AI really struggled with, and I was learning a lot, was groundwater. So, you sort of like type in groundwater and you have water on the ground. And then I would say water in between grains of rock underneath the surface. And the best I could do was this bottom right image here, where you have water in between grains of rock, and I guess it is under the surface and not connected to this lagoon, so it's not a river, but this is as close as I could get to representing glaciers and groundwater. So kind of fun way to think about this. How do you take this block diagram that a geologist immediately understands and talk to regular folks about it? So that's been fun to work through. And now where we're going to get to the thrust of what I want to talk about today are geosites. So here we're looking at a time lapse of Medicine Rocks State Park in far eastern Montana. It's on the border of North Dakota and Montana out in the Badlands. And so what is a geosite? Well, this represents a geosite. And geosites, the sort of academic definition would be geosites are areas of intrinsic scientific interest that represent key stages in Earth's evolution, ranging from small monuments to large parks, and are crucial for understanding geological heritage and conservation. What I'm seeing them as here in Montana, beautiful sites of diverse geologic interest, geographically distributed across Montana that contribute to Montana's interpretive geonarrative. So again, each site needs to fit into the geonarrative. If it doesn't, you don't get rid of that geosite. You, of course, refine your geonarrative. And so I was out here at Medicine Rocks and I saw those clouds in the distance. And so I thought I'd try to set up a time lapse with my new camera. And I went back and ate dinner. So this will be about 2 hours that you're seeing of footage. And this time lapse is actually recorded in 360 degrees. So you're recording everything. I've just cropped the frame to show you this approaching storm. And so I'm trying to find things that are very engaging to the public to then talk about the geology. And so things like this, especially in a VR headset when you're watching this time lapse of the storm, is incredibly engaging. And then you can use that to move on and talk to the public about what geology they're seeing. And so again, we're here in Montana, and I was able to spread geosites all over the state. And this has been a really fun part of my job because I spend part of the winter finding sites from all those resources I talked about. And then the summer, June is a great month to go. It's kind of post-snow, pre-fires, and planning, driving around, and going to these geosites throughout the state. So Butte is right around here. Courtney, you mentioned Lewis and Clark Caverns is right here in the Madison Limestone. And just to give you a sense, to drive out here to Miles City is probably about a 4-hour drive on an interstate. So, good old US interstate. So, you're up 6 or 7 hours to get up here, just to give you a sense for how big Montana is in the context of this. So I've filmed at 21 of these, I think 21, 22 of these geosites so far. And my project is called 41 for the 41st state. So I'm planning on 41 geosites with plans for this summer to go and finish filming at the rest of them. So when I talk about filming, here's what I really wanted to talk about today with you. And if you haven't seen 360 footage before, we'll get a chance to look at that and everybody can look at it individually and we can discuss this and talk about things. So the methodology is to record with a 360 camera. So I use Insta360, that's the brand. I had an X3 and of course a new camera came out, so I had to get that called an X4. And you can see here, it's about the size of a skinny cell phone. So it's very small, relatively inexpensive. These cameras, in Canadian dollars, about 750 bucks. And then you have to buy all the accoutrements. So not too expensive. They're waterproof. They're quite rugged. And you can see here, it has two 180-degree lenses that are on either side of the camera. And then the software within the camera is quite impressive. And it stitches that image together. And so you're seeing everything up, down, and all around. And I'm just showing this kind of weird video in an ice cave because it's a different, when you start looking at 360 footage, it's very different. You can zoom out and see the sky and it doesn't look like a normal video. And so this is just kind of distorted images of that. And what I'm doing here is the focus is not on me as an expert standing with the camera in my face talking about an outcrop. It's rather I'm a guide and I keep the camera above my head so you can look around everywhere. You can look at me if you look down or to the side or whatever, but that's not the point. And then the viewer is able to independently explore and a better experience, more immerse themselves in the geosite. And that's my goal in doing this. And so just to give you a sense of the existing workflow for this. So for this project in Montana, I try to, drive and I'll get somewhere in the afternoon, uh, either a campsite or a random dispersed camping wherever I am, scout the location and develop the story narrative. And then in the evening, I normally, have dinner. There might be some really good light on something that I need to film during, and I've also been filming what I'm calling the MBMG minute. So it's just a really cool place. You can put the camera, say, in the middle of a stream and walk away, get out of the scene, and then let the sounds and motion of the water take over. Here you can see this is Flathead Lake, a famous lake in northwestern Montana near Glacier National Park. And I'm filming the sunset on a time lapse. And so what I'm going to do is create those, and especially when VR headsets come in, they're almost like a meditative experience in nature, brought to you by the MBMG to again engage people. And then the morning is really when I film, try to get all these scenes filmed. They're between 30 seconds to 2 minutes because I want to give people enough time to feel like they're in a space, but I don't want these videos to be longer than 5 or 7 minutes total for each geosite. So I've found about a minute and a half is a good amount of time to do some explanation, allow people to look around, and then integrate that into the rest of the story. And then, of course, drive on to the next place and start the process again. So it's been really fun to do that. It's like being on field trips by myself. I'm learning a lot about where I'm going and then filming this. And of course, you get a lot of footage. And so the film production part is editing is a little bit different with 360 footage. So I've had to learn a lot about that. But first, sorting the footage, you want to use a program that takes in 360 so you can rotate all around and think about what the viewer is going to see. And then I use Adobe Premiere Pro with a plugin that allows you to manipulate 360 footage. It does require significant computing power. I've had to get a new desktop in my office and a new laptop for the field. Essentially, they have these new creator computers. They're kind of like gaming computers, but they're for YouTube creator types that have enough memory and horsepower to deal with this 360 footage. And then load up to a VR headset or onto YouTube, as we'll see here in a minute. And so that's for those who are interested, that's how I've been doing this, and it gives you a sense for, it's a day or 2 or 3 of filming, and then I've gotten it to where in an 8-hour workday, I can put together a first draft of a geosite experience. That is, of course, if you're organized and you're filming with a story in mind. So scouting that location and developing a story narrative first is very important. So you just don't have a whole bunch of film and have to figure it out later. So it's probably 2 work days to get a final version of what you're going to see here in a minute. And so in thinking about this new aspect of displaying material, I know some people have used it. People have used 360 photos and things like that. But for me, I'm really trying to get into this and use it for education. And so this 360 and virtual reality, what the potential going into this, we're using universal design for learning principles, more or less accessible learning. And we're trying to start there and think about accessibility. So these experiences, again, of course, we would want everyone to go to these places, but sometimes there's physical limitations. It's a long hike, or someone isn't able to get there. Cultural limitations, sacred sites, or sites that are sacred and open, but we don't want to trample 25 students through on a field trip. Financial considerations, not everybody can afford to go to Iceland or wherever we might be going. Anxiety of traveling or going into tight spaces, and also safety. You'll see here when I show you one of the videos, there's a place, that you wouldn't want to take students, but you can preserve these geosites through this method. And so some of these are fragile places that are falling apart, or ice caves that are melting away. Active geology like lava flows, volcanic eruptions, landslides, mud flows, things like that can be preserved in this. And then over tourism being an issue. You think about a lot of places around the world, some of them like Whistler get a lot of tourists. And so, of course, you can film in 360. I also have a microphone that gets 360 sound. So if you're in a headset and you move your head, the sound source changes to where you're looking at. It's pretty cool. And then you can take this footage and reframe it into a traditional video wherever you want. So if you use this, you're never missing anything where you are. You know how we've all been to the field and you take a photo and you said, well, I should have taken that photo over there, those sorts of things. This allows you to reframe it and create a photo or a video of any frame you want. There's also more potential for immersion. So we always talk about engagement when teaching. How do we get students, especially when I taught up at Quest University, it was all about engaging students in whatever your topic was. And either through a VR headset or on a computer, laptop, desktop, or your phone, we'll see here in a minute, can really be more immersive if done correctly. And that's what I'm thinking about right now, is how to do this. And I'm looking forward to some questions and discussion with that. Of course, university teaching, observing outcrops in 3D. In sustainability courses, we show tours of places, factories, and those sorts of things. And then geotourism, so the geoparks and museums that I'm working in right now, a nice way to engage people with fun things, maybe have fun looking at geology. And then what I'm working towards is on-site interactive live streaming. So I've never live streamed anything. I don't even have social media personally, but with this is a Starlink Mini. Elon Musk, who's going to be our vice president or whatever he's aiming for now here in the US, has created this small portable satellite internet. And you can hook up various batteries to this and use it in the field. And so I'm looking to create live interactive lecture and lab sessions on the outcrop anywhere in the world. And right now, it's minus 10 Celsius this morning. You think about if someone was somewhere else in the field, you could have a lab where people are engaging with that person live and asking questions and looking at outcrops in 360 from computers or VR headsets. So there's a lot of potential there. And I'm just starting to scratch the surface of figuring out the best ways to look at these things. So what I'd like to do right now is, I have to change this. Sorry, I have to go back to Pointer. And what I'd like to do now is show, okay. Can someone help me? Can you see this video playing?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so let's just stop here for a second. So I'm going to have you in a minute. I'm going to give you a playlist of some of these videos. And so these are shot in 360. They're first drafts. Some of this is just raw footage. And the nice thing about this is you can take the video just with your mouse and you can, some of you have probably done this before, you can rotate however you want. Okay. And so here you can think about using this as a teaching resource where this is an ice cave that I'm going to go into. You probably wouldn't want to take the students into this ice cave. This is in May. This is on the south coast of Iceland. I was there for a UBC field trip, filmed this, and then I went back in September for a friend's birthday, and this was all gone. It was melted away, collapsed, melted away. So preserving that, but also you can start to think about students using this or the public using this just to engage with this area. Because you can look wherever you want. You can stop, look around. You start to see wonderful glacial features. And then there's a lagoon over here. And then, of course, you can look at me, but you don't need to do that. I'm learning to film better whether I'm not in the screen. And so I'm an old man with a selfie stick. I didn't have a selfie stick for the first 49 years of my life, and now I think I have 6 of them. Because you hold this camera on a selfie stick, and then the software erases the stick and the camera, and my hand is a little bit deformed, but you can't see that stick in the footage. So it's pretty cool way to film and engage. And so here you can, look at the details in the ice. You can zoom in. The resolution, of course, is getting better with time. And this is just a video I made, and it's uploaded to YouTube. So let's go in the ice cave here. I'm not sure if you can hear the sound, but you can engage with the dripping water. When I have 360 sound, it'll really be immersive. And you wouldn't really want to take students into this. There's quicksand up to my feet, and it's quite a dangerous spot to go. The 2 Americans were killed on a tour in Iceland with the glacier collapsing a few kilometers from this in a much larger glacier. But you can start to see where you can get in here, and depending on what you're looking at, you can talk about different things. You can have questions for students to explore different things. You can see a moulin here and really be engaged in a place like this with this technology. And so for me, the 360 pictures and video have spoiled me for normal video. Because every time I see a normal video, I try to click and drag around to see what else is there. And of course, you end up pausing the video or ruining it. So lots of fun exploring these places. You can really nerd out on geologic textures, or you can just get a sense for geology, depending on the audience. And this is one of my favorites. If you can see the dust that gets blown into the glacier in kind of a different way with this technology, keeping it safe for everyone and preserving the geosite that is now gone. So there's more ice caves, but this particular ice cave no longer exists. Okay, so are we? It's all right. Too fast. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is, I'd like to do now is send you guys to navigate on your own. And check it. We're going to take 5 or 10 minutes, have you check out a couple videos I've made. You can do this on a laptop. You can do this on your phone. And there's instructions here that I'll put back up. I'm actually just going to go back to the last slide. My computer's being a little slow here. And just show you real quick. So I'm going to give you a link in the chat. And you're going to go and choose a video. And then a couple things I want you to do is down here on this little wheel, change the quality to 4K, because that way you'll get the good quality, and then you can go to full screen, and then just use your mouse to move around in the video. So those are a couple things that that I'd like you to do. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is we're back here. I'm going to take this link and I'm going to share it in the chat. And so for the rest of the presentation, please ask questions. Look at these videos. If you can't figure out how to look at that, please ask. And there'll be a playlist of about 7 or 8 videos. They're first drafts. One of them is kind of finalized, but go ahead and take a look at those. And you know, comment, question. I'd like to open this up for, kind of the lunch and learn style discussion, and check them out as you go. Any questions, whether it's about the geology or the technology, or if you can't get it to work, go ahead and fire away. So everyone has the link in the chat. All right. And I've just put, if anybody needs, there's some tips and tricks here on the screen if anybody needs those. Okay, so I think everybody's probably had a chance to look at a video, and I wanted to see if we could come back and I just wanted to get some feedback from people on their initial thoughts, questions you have, comments, anything like that. I know there's been a lot in the chat, but I was just wondering if there's anything else that anyone has. If I can pull you away from those videos, always a challenge. It's a good sign that you're engaged. Um, as I have a question for you, have any of you ever used a VR headset?
Mhm.
Okay, because it's pretty amazing to go into these, especially when you're in the drone and stuff in a VR headset. I'm afraid of heights and I actually get freaked out. Um, we have some funding to buy some for the integrated science, Go Global at UBC, kind of the international program. We've got some money for this to buy some headsets and strap the students in. Anything else? Any other comments or questions? Maureen?
Yeah, when you mentioned the motion sickness, I was wondering the same thing. So with users who've tried it out so far, sometimes students can't do um, field trips or field courses because of disabilities, and sometimes there's like extra visual processing kinds of
Yeah.
issues. I just wondered if you had any sort of experience with this not, I don't know, not working with the VR sets. For some people,
Yeah.
maybe it's better with the computer, or even on the computer, maybe it's too much and they just have to kind of frame it. I don't know. Anything you've got would be
Yeah.
interesting.
So last year on our Hawaii trip, which is coming up here this year in a couple weeks, we have 15 students on a sustainability trip, and we all stay in the same house. And so I've been testing it out on these students, and we'll go to a site, and then I'll have an experience in VR from that site. And we ask them a bunch of survey type questions, and we don't mention motion sickness, but it usually comes up. And so,
Really? Okay.
yeah, but the problem was last year that, of course, I tried to do a lava tube in VR, and it's like a lava tube's hard to film anyway, and it's disorienting. And so, um, we go into this lava tube, but we had some students who were very disoriented. And so this year I'm doing more like a beach somewhere that's easier to film and easier
You
to
can see
deal
the
with.
sky, you can see a
Yeah,
horizon. You kind
right.
of, okay, yeah, gotcha.
And what I've also am able to do is I have a tablet that I can, as the instructor, I can see what the student's looking at on the tablet real time.
That's
And
cool.
so I think pairing students up, if they're together, one could be looking at the tablet and seeing the same thing, and they can still discuss if they have trouble with
Yeah,
the VR. And like I said, the University Universal Design for Learning, we're trying to figure out, like you're talking
yeah.
about, different ways. So this year we're going to do headsets, real life, and laptop, and gather information from
Everything.
students.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we're in the
that's
process
great.
of doing that. Yeah,
Okay, thank you. That's
you
great.
bet.
How close can you get to the outcrop? I sort of saw in one of your examples, you're zooming in quite close, but in terms of, seeing the textures of the rock and having a sense for, almost like feeling it, that's
Yeah,
such an important part of geology that I kind of wonder, is,
yep.
is is using a camera have limitations in that sense?
I mean, it does. If you look at the Bighorn Canyon, about a minute in, maybe I'm looking at some fossils in a rock. I can potentially share it here as well if I can get to it. Use my own link, I guess, would make sense. And it's a good point. So, there are some limitations because if you're focusing on,
within it, a story.
I'm just gonna go to the spot here. Okay, I'm just gonna share real quick and see if I can pull
I
this
mean,
off.
there are ways of trying to simulate that by like grabbing a piece of the rock and crumbling it in your hand, like the one from the Badlands, right?
Hmm.
A tactile kind of a sense for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm also working with that sound to make it more realistic. I mean, this is just an example of getting in close to this whatever these Devonian seafloor life was.
Right.
And the issue is you can see the camera gets a little shaky just because you're focusing in so closely. Um, and so as I get better at this and the cameras continue to improve, I think we'll get at that. Yeah, I've tried things like crumbling the rock or scraping it off just to give it more tactile sense. Ideally, you could think about if you knew where you were going to go, you could have lab samples of the rock types. As students are watching this, they can, have a hand sample kind of thing, just
Right.
to give that sense. Yeah. But there are the limitations of not being there that we're trying to not overcome, but just enhance the experience. Sharon?
Oops. Just a second. Getting myself on there. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm with the city of Ottawa. I just wanted to I liked what I've watched. I was watching the crazy what was that, Crazy Mountain? Anyway, I was watching some
Yeah,
of yeah,
yeah.
and so and I just kind of saw with the comment made by Sarah Rosen there. Like I was wondering about that because I'm at a field. I was listening to you talk, but then I was exploring the 360, kind of looking at the surrounding area, and then you were like, and look at here, the con, and I was like, oh, where's the con? So I had to like kind
Yeah,
of go back, and I was like, where's he pointing? Where's he pointing?
yeah.
And then yeah, kind of. So I was wondering if there's a way that, like, just to kind of follow up with what she's talking about, reorienting the video, like when you're speaking and then you're pointing something out, that the
Yeah,
video brings you to the attention of whatever you're speaking with, just as a
yeah,
comment. But
yes.
I do like what I'm watching. Like I think that's really cool. It's not so static because
Mhm.
we've had some thoughts about how we can do something like this as well at the city. With knowledge leaving,
Yeah,
many years of geological knowledge leaving, people retiring
yeah,
and not captured. Like this would be great to have someone who is like about to retire to go around
yeah,
and
for sure.
talk about the site and share their experiences and knowledge at that site, but then allow that person who's viewing and listening to also see the area too
Mhm.
around them. Because right now the video, the thought we had right now, like the thought, well, more I had right now was just kind of video the person talking
Yeah,
and they're
right.
showing them the
Yeah,
site and
yeah,
I mean
yeah,
it's at least there, and we have their voice and we have them
yeah,
talking. But anyway, this is really cool though. I like it. But I also agree though. I'm a little dizzy, but
yep. Well, and so
yeah,
so
it's cool though.
part of it is user experience. So how experienced the user is. So I've been doing this for about a year, and so I watch my own videos, and I'm like, whoa. And so if say you're watching on a phone or a headset, it's like, where did you start? You start paying attention to like, okay, I'm sitting here facing that wall. And so if I go back there, I know I went back to where I started. Or if I'm using my phone, that's one way to orient. I've also put some arrows. Like if I say, look over here, I'll have arrows, and everywhere you look, the arrow is pointing whichever way I want you to see. And I'm trying that out. In one video, I have the MBMG logo just in a spot to see if go back to the logo to look. So I'm trying different things with that. And this is what I'm trying to gather information from folks and students to see what works best, and then learn how to do it in the editing. Yeah. So, um, Leslie.
Hi, very quickly. Those were fantastic, and I could have spent your entire presentation watching your
Yeah.
videos. No offense. I wanted to say Maureen had some very insightful comments. I think from well, and thankfully I don't have vertigo. I don't have any feelings of illness or anything when I wear a headset. And I really am amazed at how well this works as an educational tool. I think it would really help to meet objectives for an accessible field trip. Just so you know, we're Courtney and a few of us are working to plan for an accessible field trip at the Geological Association of Canada conference in Ottawa, Sharon Lee, in May. I'm already thinking about 3D camera and that sort of thing. But to Maureen's point, north, south, east, west would be really helpful, especially for someone like me who doesn't know anything about Montana. So if the audience is not familiar, I don't know also the thought of a map of the area at the
Yep.
beginning of each one of your videos, just so people can orient themselves. That might help with the other comments people had. And the other thing, and I don't mean to be difficult, scales. We're geologists. We all want to know what size are these things. And I
Yeah.
know that that's a very complex thing to do in the fly. But somehow maybe incorporating that in your post-production might
Yep.
be something.
Good idea.
Again, even with your hand samples, if you have a hand sample of whatever
Yep.
with your scale, or you can include your scale bar in some of your shots, that might be really helpful. But I love them. They're fantastic.
Well,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. Well, and you can, yeah, I'll put my email up here on the last slide as we finish out. And anyone feel free to contact me because obviously I'm learning this stuff. I'm, you know, getting somewhere with it, but these comments are very informative. David.
Fantastic. That was awesome. I would kind of echo the map comment. I was so interested in as we share a border with you of being like, now where are they in relation to us? Like, is this 20 minutes across our border?
Yeah.
Is it so? Absolutely fascinating. What I was going to sort of ask, and you might not have an answer to this, but Google formerly had a software that allowed you to do guided 360 video experiences. So you could put all of us in the 360 video experience. We could look our own way. But then as you as the presenter, you could like ping something and it would bring all of our attention gently over to what you were looking at. And sometimes you could add an artifacts and there are digital pieces. So as we're looking around, I could touch the little blue star that pops up and it tells me something about the texture of the rock that you're showing us. Or Google sadly discontinued that software
Yeah.
about 4 years ago. Have you seen something since? I know you're more in the space than we are. So have you seen
Yeah.
a similar presenting tool?
The tech folks at UBC pushed me towards I think it's 3D Vista or Vista 3D. I can't remember which way that is. And so we got funding to get a license for it. I haven't looked into it yet. And it's kind of like Matterport or one of these softwares designed to sell houses. And Vista 3D is supposed to be more adaptable to what we're trying to do than Matterport. And there, you can have the 360 footage. You can click on a button to have a mini lecture or, that sort of thing that you're talking about. I don't know about the orientation of people in the experience. And so that's an important thing. It also lends me towards, do you use these types of experiences as more exploratory rather than explanatory? So it's like, go into this outcrop, look around, just like I did when I was teaching on a field trip. You have 20 minutes to make a sketch of something, and then we come back to as a group and describe it, rather than trying to really explain everything. So lots to think about in that space. But yeah, Vista 3D or 3D Vista, I can't remember, is the one I'm gonna start using for UBC. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have you figured out how to simulate the cold and the heat and the rain and all that kind of stuff? Maybe
Well,
a list of accessories to have
yeah.
on hand when you're looking at the video so you can splash some water.
That's right. I have like a spray bottle, somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've got ideas for a immersive museum visit that have the ice cave footage all on the ceiling with air conditioning and that sort of stuff. But for this, the closest thing I've seen is like fly over Iceland or fly over Canada, where the seats move and they make smells and things like that. But I think otherwise, sound is the thing I'm using next. Like I said, there's a 360 microphone, and trying to have that, you're in a forest and the sound is realistic as you turn your head, was kind of the next thing, the next sense I'm trying to.
Yeah, I guess there's genuine sound that you want to preserve, but there's also that wind noise that you get on the
Yeah.
microphone. On the Badlands video, that was kind of disconcerting a little bit. I mean, I've noticed that with news broadcasts a lot of times too. They interview people and there's this horrendous background noise, and you think, well, can't you just easily filter that out somehow?
So on some of those, I was experimenting and I was actually adding a little bit of wind to make you feel like you were flying. So, maybe it was too loud for that, but I'm trying to not just have a silent screen
Right.
because I don't record sound with the drone where I do, but you don't want to hear it because it's the rotors and everything. So I have this kind of wind soundtrack that's just kind of a whooshing noise. Yeah.
Hmm. So you have like a whole room of cast of characters with shoes banging
That's
and
right. Little getting rocks. There's a place here called Ringing Rocks that you hit the rocks and they give different notes. And so I went up there and recorded. I haven't produced it yet, but that should be fun. Courtney?
I'm thinking this would also be really cool in mines as well. Have you tried
Yes.
any of these in mines, and do they want you to come in and have that sort of access?
So actually below me right now on campus, underground, is the University Mine Education Center. So they actually have the only underground teaching mine in the US anyway, where the students are blasting and mucking and everything. And so I went down there and filmed. Again, I haven't produced that one yet. And that it was very interesting because there's no lights, and so it's a headlamp, and I rigged up a light for my camera. And then the Montana Resources Berkeley pit mine or Continental pit mine, the huge mine in town. I have this fantasy of strapping my camera to one of their haul trucks and then just going through the whole process of it get loaded and going on the belt. And that'll take some coaxing to let me close or let my camera close, but that's one of my experiences I want to do on my list. Yeah. But
Really cool.
I think for mines it's pretty cool because let's say they're gonna blast, you can record in 360 before that blast as a quick and easy record of your geology as you go, without having to invest too much in that. Yeah. So
Right. Cool.
right. It looks like I'll just put up the last slide here so you can I'll get rid of this and so thanks everybody for coming today. These are just some animations that I'm trying to incorporate animations into the 360 experiences. These are of course flat animations. They're of the Fire and Ice Georegion. But thanks everybody. Funding is provided by the Bureau here in Montana, the Fire and Ice Georegion, CGF, Canadian Geological Foundation, has helped with some of this, and then UBC Integrated Sciences and teaching and learning enhancement grant type stuff. If you want to get in touch with me, steve.quane@gmail.com. That's Q there, Quane at gmail.com is the best way as I'm traveling and doing different things in life. I'm always checking that email. So thanks again. And I really appreciate this, Courtney, the opportunity to do this.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Steve.
everyone.
You bet.